I couldn't believe my ears when she said it. Sitting across from me at the kitchen table, her eyes were cold, even, without the slightest trace of regret. "I cheated on you," she said so calmly, as if she were commenting on the weather. My mouth was dry, my hands were shaking, my heart seemed to have stopped. I tried to find even a drop of remorse in her words, but there was none. "I don't regret it," she added, emotionlessly, simply stating the fact. I didn't have anything. I felt nothing. Every word she said was a blow, every sentence a knife to the heart. I looked at her, hoping for at least the slightest emotion, fear, guilt, pity. But her face was stony. "You're exaggerating," she said, almost smiling, as if the accusation was coming from me. In that moment, I understood. This was not a mistake, not a fight, not a temporary weakness. This was her decision. She cheated, and she didn't feel a shred of guilt. My life, our marriage, everything I believed in, collapsed in seconds, and she sat across from me as if nothing had happened. A cold, final end. Before all of this, I honestly thought we had a normal marriage. We laughed, we argued, we had routines, nothing flashy, nothing dramatic, but it felt stable. I told myself that small annoyances were just part of life, that no marriage was perfect. I remembered the late-night talks, the weekends we spent together, the way she used to lean on my shoulder when she was tired. I thought love meant tolerating little quirks, compromising, and trusting that the other person cared as much as you did. Looking back now, I see the cracks I ignored. The coldness in her tone when I tried to talk about feelings, the way she would roll her eyes when I expressed concern, or dismiss little signs that something was off. I excused it all. She's stressed, she's busy, she just has a different personality. I believed in us so blindly that I didn't see the emotional distance slowly creeping in. I didn't notice the pattern forming, the tiny betrayals of attention and affection, the little lies that never made sense at the time. If I had, maybe I would have recognized that this marriage was already shifting before I even realized it. The subtle changes started so quietly that I barely noticed them at first. Little things, a missed call here, a text she quickly hid there, seemed insignificant at the time. I told myself I was overthinking. I shrugged off her sudden late nights at work or the vague excuses for disappearing on weekends. When I asked, she'd just smile and say, "You worry too much," and I believed her. But looking back, the signs were all there. She stopped sharing her day with me. The jokes we used to have disappeared, and our conversations became functional, almost transactional. Her laughter, once easy and warm, now felt rehearsed or absent. I dismissed my gut feeling again and again, telling myself that it was just a phase, stress, or me being paranoid. I ignored the unease in my chest, the sinking feeling that something was changing beneath the surface. The truth is, those tiny moments were the foundation of the betrayal I didn't see coming. Each small lie, each moment of detachment, built up silently until it became a wall I couldn't break through. And by the time I finally confronted her, I realized that what I had ignored for so long wasn't just distance. It was the beginning of her emotional affair. There were red flags, plenty of them, but I explained them away every single time. When she suddenly became secretive about her phone, I told myself she deserved privacy. When she started canceling plans with me at the last minute, I convinced myself she was just overwhelmed. Even the way she would laugh at texts I couldn't see or step out for just a minute without explanation, I shrugged it off. Every instinct in my gut screamed that something was wrong, but I buried it under rationalizations. I wanted to believe in her, in us. I told myself, I'm just overreacting, I'm imagining things, she's just stressed. I ignored the way she stopped looking at me the same way, how her touch became mechanical instead of warm, how her words felt carefully measured rather than genuine. By the time the truth hit me, I realized how blind I had been. Each red flag was a warning sign I dismissed. Each tiny betrayal I excused allowed the bigger one to take root. And now, sitting in the aftermath, I see how my need to explain and justify her behavior only delayed the inevitable pain. My trust, my clarity, my sense of safety, all eroded slowly, while I told myself I was being reasonable. I remember the exact moment I first felt it, like a cold punch to the chest. It wasn't a dramatic revelation, just a tiny incident that suddenly didn't sit right. She came home later than usual, claiming she'd been at a work meeting, and I noticed her phone buzz constantly on the counter. She glanced at it quickly, almost nervously, and I caught that subtle flicker of tension in her eyes. My stomach sank. I tried to push it away, telling myself I was imagining things. She's just busy, I thought. Stop being paranoid. But the unease wouldn't leave. I started paying attention to the small inconsistencies, the text she hurriedly hid, the call she pretended didn't matter, the way she suddenly seemed distant during moments that used to be intimate. It was subtle at first, almost invisible to anyone else. But for me, it was deafening. My gut screamed betrayal even when my mind clung to denial. I realized that something had shifted, her attention, her affection, her honesty. That day, I felt the first sharp sting of fear that the person I loved, the person I trusted the most, might already be slipping away from me emotionally. And yet, I still clung to hope that it wasn't true. Her behavior changed in ways I couldn't ignore, no matter how hard I tried to rationalize it. She stopped initiating conversations, stopped asking about my day, stopped laughing at the little things we used to share. Even when we were in the same room, it felt like she was somewhere else, distant, detached, emotionally unavailable. The warmth that had defined our relationship evaporated almost overnight. She became defensive when I asked simple questions, brushing off concerns with casual remarks. You're imagining things, or you're overreacting. But the truth was written in every small gesture, her eyes avoiding mine, the way she subtly closed off, the sudden disinterest in plans we used to make together. She was present physically but absent emotionally, and the tension between us grew heavier with every passing day. What hurt the most was how normalized it became for her. I caught myself wondering if she even noticed the distance, or if she simply didn't care. Each shift, each cold glance, each evasive answer chipped away at my trust, leaving a hollow space where love used to be. And the deeper I looked, the more I realized. This wasn't just stress or a phase. This was a transformation I had ignored, a warning I had refused to acknowledge, and it was leading straight to betrayal. The lies started small, almost imperceptible, but they never made sense. She'd tell me she was at a work event, only for a friend to later mention seeing her somewhere else. She'd claim she forgot a conversation we had, or that she didn't say something she clearly did. Each time, I caught myself trying to rationalize it. Maybe she's stressed, maybe I misremembered, maybe it wasn't a big deal. But the inconsistencies kept piling up. Texts that disappeared, calls she didn't make, stories that changed mid-sentence. It was like living in a distorted reality where truth and fiction blended together. Every explanation she offered felt rehearsed, precise, calculated. And yet, she delivered them with such calm confidence that I found myself questioning my own judgment. The worst part was how casual it all became for her. I could see the way she brushed off my concerns, the almost imperceptible smirk when I pressed for answers, as if she enjoyed my confusion. That's when the sinking realization hit me. This wasn't a series of mistakes. This was deliberate, a game she was playing, and I had no idea how deep it went. I felt trapped in a marriage where honesty no longer existed, and the person I trusted most was already rewriting reality around me. By the time I started piecing things together, the emotional distance between us was undeniable. It wasn't a sudden drop. It had been creeping in slowly, almost invisibly, until it became a canyon I couldn't cross. She no longer shared her thoughts or feelings. Our conversations were practical, empty, and superficial. Even when we were together, I felt invisible, like I was a stranger in my own home. I tried to reach her, tried to reconnect, but every attempt was met with impatience, dismissive remarks, or polite silence. I remember asking her why she seemed so distant, hoping for some confession, some reassurance, any sign that she still cared. Her answer was always the same. You're overthinking, or I'm just busy, relax. But I could feel the truth beneath the words. The warmth, the empathy, the intimacy that once defined us had vanished. It wasn't just emotional distance, it was the calm before the storm. I didn't know it yet, but that gap she created was exactly what allowed her to step outside our marriage without hesitation. The little walls she built over months became a fortress behind which she could betray me emotionally, and eventually physically, without guilt, without shame, without looking back. And all the while, I kept convincing myself I was imagining it. I found out in the most ordinary, horrifying way, through a message I wasn't supposed to see. My heart stopped before I even finished reading it. Every word screamed betrayal. The casual affection, the plans I'd never be a part of, the complete disregard for our marriage. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe, unable to move, as a cold realization settled over me. This wasn't a mistake, it wasn't a lapse, it was deliberate. When I confronted her, I wanted tears, guilt, something, anything that showed she understood the devastation she'd caused. But there was nothing. Her face was calm, detached, almost smug. I didn't mean for it to happen, and I'm not sorry, she said. Those words cut deeper than the affair itself. I realized in that moment that the betrayal wasn't just physical. It was emotional, spiritual, the kind that hollowed out everything I thought I knew about love. I felt a mix of shock, humiliation, and disbelief. How could someone you trusted completely step outside your life and do this without a shred of remorse? Her indifference was the hardest blow. The affair itself was painful, but her lack of guilt made it unbearable. I finally understood that the marriage I was fighting for had already ended. She had already moved on in every way that mattered. I confronted her the moment I couldn't hold it in any longer. How could you do this to us? I demanded, my voice shaking, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I needed her to look me in the eyes and show some sign, any sign, that she understood the pain she caused. But she didn't flinch. She didn't hesitate. She simply met my gaze, cold and steady, and said, "I don't regret it. I felt nothing. It just happened, and I'm not sorry." Time seemed to stop. The words echoed in my head, hammering me with the finality I hadn't wanted to accept. Every hope I'd held on to, the hope of remorse, of reconciliation, of understanding, was gone. I searched for any hint of shame, even a flicker of guilt, and found nothing. Her calm, unshakable detachment was a wall I couldn't break. I tried to argue, to reason, to remind her of us, of everything we'd shared, but she waved me off. "You're overreacting. It didn't mean anything to me. I don't owe you anything," she said, like it was the simplest truth in the world. The humiliation, the shock, the icy clarity of betrayal slammed into me all at once. This marriage was over, and she felt nothing. It wasn't just cheating, it was the ultimate abandonment. And I realized that no explanation, no pleading, would ever make her care. Her lack of guilt was more painful than the affair itself. I expected anger, shame, even a fleeting apology, but there was nothing. Just a calm, almost casual acceptance of what she'd done. "I don't feel bad," she said, shrugging, as if my devastation was irrelevant. "It's already done. I don't owe you explanations or guilt." Her words hit me harder than any lie or deception ever could. I searched her eyes, desperate for emotion, for any sign she understood the destruction she'd caused. But her gaze was empty, sharp, unyielding. She treated the entire ordeal as if it were a minor inconvenience, something that happened and was immediately behind her. She didn't flinch at my tears, didn't waver when I begged for understanding, didn't even attempt to justify herself beyond cold rationalizations. That's when the truth finally sank in. She could betray without conscience, abandon without regret. All the late-night doubts, the red flags I'd ignored, the subtle changes I'd excused, everything led to this final, chilling reality. It wasn't just about cheating. It was the emotional death of our marriage. And I understood, painfully, that some people will never feel remorse, no matter how much you loved them or suffered for them. I collapsed emotionally in a way I hadn't expected. The shock had worn off, replaced by a deep, crushing ache that seemed to fill every corner of my chest. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and hollow all at once. Memories of our marriage, moments I cherished, laughter we shared, promises we made, twisted painfully in my mind, now tainted by the realization that none of it had mattered to her. I couldn't stop replaying her words. "I don't feel bad. It just happened. I don't owe you anything." Each repetition was like a blow, stripping away layers of denial I had built to survive the growing unease. I felt numb, then angry, then broken again, cycling through emotions too fast to process. I wanted to scream, to beg, to make her understand the devastation she caused, but I knew it would be useless. For the first time, I saw clearly how much I had been giving to someone incapable of empathy. My trust, my love, my energy, all wasted on a person who didn't value them. The emotional collapse wasn't just about grief, it was a brutal awakening. I realized that holding on, pleading, or explaining would never bring her remorse. I had to face the painful truth. The marriage I fought for was gone, and she didn't care. The decision to stop chasing her didn't come quickly. It came in the quiet moments after the confrontation, when the adrenaline faded and only the cold reality remained. I realized I had been running after someone who had no intention of turning back. Every plea, every attempt to reason, every hope for an apology was met with emptiness. Chasing her only deepened my pain. Sitting alone, I finally let myself feel the full weight of what she'd done and what she would never feel. I understood that I couldn't change her, couldn't force guilt, couldn't revive a love that existed only in my mind. That clarity, as painful as it was, brought a strange relief. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of control returning, not over her, but over myself. I decided I would stop explaining, stop justifying, stop begging for recognition of the harm she caused. My energy, my love, my respect, they belonged to me, not to someone incapable of empathy. It wasn't immediate healing, but it was the first step. I understood that self-respect begins when you stop running after someone who refuses to care, and that freedom, as terrifying as it felt, was mine to claim. Distance became my shield. I stopped expecting her to care, stopped hoping she'd change, stopped looking for signs of remorse. Each interaction became transactional, stripped of emotion, and every time she tried to pull me back into arguments or justifications, I stepped further away. I learned to listen without reacting, to feel without collapsing, to protect myself from the damage she no longer seemed capable of recognizing. Detachment didn't happen overnight. At first, it felt hollow, painful, almost like giving up. But gradually, it became liberation. I stopped measuring my worth by her actions, stopped letting her indifference define my emotions. I began to see the marriage for what it really was, a bond that had been poisoned by her lack of empathy and her deliberate choices. With distance, I found clarity. The emotional chains that had bound me to her guiltless betrayal loosened. I no longer carried the weight of her choices on my shoulders. Instead, I focused on myself, on reclaiming the life and dignity I had been surrendering in silent hope that she might feel something she never would. The more I detached, the more I understood. Sometimes walking away emotionally is the only path to preserving your sanity and self-respect. Looking back, I see everything clearly now. Cheating hurts, but cheating without guilt is the final betrayal. Her affair wasn't just a physical act. It was the emotional death of our marriage, a reminder that love without empathy is hollow. I wasted months hoping she would feel remorse, that she would recognize the pain she caused, but some people simply don't. Believing otherwise only prolongs suffering. The lesson I learned, and the advice I wish I could have given my younger self, is this: when someone cheats and shows no guilt, believe them. Don't waste your energy explaining, pleading, or begging for acknowledgement. Self-respect begins when you stop trying to force someone to care, when you step back and reclaim your own dignity. It's painful, it's humiliating, but it's also liberating. I stopped chasing, I stopped explaining, and slowly, I began to rebuild myself. I realized that love without accountability is emotional abandonment. Protecting your heart is not weakness, it's survival. And in the end, walking away from someone incapable of remorse is not giving up. It's the bravest act of respect you can offer yourself.